On this episode, we discuss the flooding situation in Thailand and Bangkok and discuss the why, how, and what next.
So, if you've ever found yourself waiting to work or stranded at home in Bangkok, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who once tried to ask for dipping sauce in my beginner Thai, but got the tones wrong and instead asked for vagina water. True story.
Ouch. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 19 years ago, fell in love with waiting to work, and I never left.
Yeah, you got to keep those feet moisturized.
That's right.
What better way than to walk to work in water?
That's right. We want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Yap Polentier. Sorry, Yap, if I messed up your name there, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Stick around after we're done talking about Bangkok's latest flooding issues to hear why Yap is the first guy we'll call if the Bangkok Podcast ever needs a business manager.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the cool things patrons like Yap get is an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we talk about current events in Thailand and whatever else comes into our minds. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we took an article that appeared in the Bangkok Post a few days ago titled Bangkok Losing Its Gloss, and went through it to give our thoughts on what we think the article got right, got wrong, and how the Bangkok experience can be improved for everyone.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. Some of it good, some of it bad. We had some ideas of our own, too.
Yeah.
It's worth a read.
They should put us in charge, man. We could fix this city.
That'll be our new segment. If we were in charge.
That's right.
This is what it would do.
Well, we pretty much act like we're actually important people anyway.
Well, we act like we're important people, but we are still have an element of humility. We're not like bar stool guys. This is what they got to do to fix everything.
Well,
not yet, anyway.
We are kind of like that. We just self-aware at how ridiculous we are. So it's like we're slightly better than those barstool experts because they don't have our self-awareness.
All right. Well, on this episode, because we are right in the middle of a giant worldwide climate global strike walkout thing that's been happening in several cities over the past few days, and middle of the rainy season, and we've got some pretty bad flooding going on throughout Bangkok, we thought we would dive back into it with a discussion about Bangkok's flooding. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? What is some of our stories of our history with Bangkok's rainy season and what happens when it floods? And some ideas that we might have about what can be done and some criticisms as to why it is like it is. So what do you think about the current flooding that's going on right now, Ed?
Well, it seems to be pretty bad, and it's obviously not just Bangkok. I mean, I think probably Bangkok is not as bad as apparently the eastern part of the country has got hit pretty bad. I was just checking recent news, and check this out, dude. This is like an official assessment. It looks like by the European Commission, maybe? I'm not sure, but this is some kind of official assessment, and it says widespread floods have affected 32 Thai provinces since the end of August. Ubon Ratchathani, Yasathon, Roi Et, and Sisaket are the most affected and still in critical condition. According to media reports, as of 19 September, so that's just yesterday, 33 people are confirmed dead, 23,000 have been evacuated, and 418,000 affected. At least 4,000 houses and 325,000 hectares of crops have been destroyed. I mean, that is insane.
Do you say 32 provinces?
Yeah. I mean, that's
half of the provinces.
Half the whole country is like flooded. And I think, parts of Bangkok are, because my students have been complaining about I bumped into one of my students on the elevator today. And I was like, dude, you look tired. And he basically said he was like up all night. He got stuck in like a rainstorm, and then he got home and his house was flooding. He had like some kind of nightmare evening, like dealing with like the flood. So I think Bangkok is kind of weird when it comes to flooding because I think it's just very hit or miss. If you happen to be on the right street, you could be safe and just like you're on your own island. And then if you're on the wrong street, you might get hit like every time it rains.
That's right. And it's interesting you say that because that's what happens on my soy. Like my soy is right on the river. Like it dead ends onto the river almost.
Right.
And it never floods.
Yeah.
But if you go like 100 meters down out of the soy to the main street and you go 100 meters in either direction, like there's huge puddles on the street when it rains. So
yeah, it's pretty random, man. I mean, and it's like so I think I've lived in 5 different places in my stay in Thailand, and basically I've experienced flooding in 2 out of the 5. So back in the day when I lived on Soi 1, I lived on Soi 1 close to Bumrungrad Hospital. I lived there for 5 years. And that soy flooded all the time. Luckily, my actual apartment, my house/apartment, never flooded. But as soon as you stepped outside of our property into the street, it flooded a lot. So I wasn't really joking about the waiting to work thing. Although I got to admit, my current location for the last 5 years, I haven't had that experience, so I've been lucky. But for many years, I did have the experience of after major rainstorms where the water would be, I still think in terms of feet, but the water would be like definitely more than a foot high. So it wasn't the kind of puddle that you could just kind of step over. It's kind of like the whole street is so I guess it would be something like, 10 to 20 centimeters deep. So which means you basically have to wear like knee level boots, or you have to take off your shoes and like roll up your pants.
It's gone beyond puddle at that point. That's post puddle.
It's way beyond that. So I mean, many times I would come out to go to work and I would look at the street and it just looks like a river. And what I would do is I would get out some flip-flops, because I don't want to walk down the street barefoot. I would get out some flip-flops, take off my shoes, take off my socks, roll up my pants to my knees, put on flip-flops, and then like walk up the soy to Sukhumvit, with my, it wasn't knee-deep water, but it was maybe like halfway up my calf.
I'm going to start selling those. I'm going to start selling the like instead of the gun holster that you put on your ankle, they're going to put a flip-flop holster. You can just stash your flip-flops there underneath your pants and pull them out.
The crazy thing is, like Soi 1 is considered like, I don't necessarily want to say prime real estate, but it's like Soi 1 is not like some kind of back soy. I mean, it's right where Bumrungrad Hospital is. It's right near the SkyTrain. It's a very well developed soy, but I don't know if it still floods anymore, but the whole time I lived there, it flooded. Right,
and it's interesting because you've always lived in the sort of like places that have ground level entrances. But I never have.
I mean, not always. So, I mean, I was lucky that during the worst flooding, which was, I guess, that was 2011, is that right? 2012? That when we had like the monstrous floods, I was lucky because I lived on the 3rd floor. That was when I lived on Rachida, and I lived on the 3rd floor. And some flooding did make it onto Rachida, but not down where I lived. So during those massive floods that affected a lot of people I know, I totally escaped during those floods.
It's funny, I've only lived in 4 places in my time in Thailand, and I've lived on my first place was on the 16th floor, second place was on the 10th floor, third place was on the 6th floor, and the 4th place now I'm on the 4th floor. So I'm getting lower to the ground with every successive move.
Funny.
Pretty soon I'm going to be in a basement suite or something, and then I'm really in trouble.
Even if the thing is though, even if you live in a building where you're on a higher floor, sometimes the area around where you live can be flooded. So like you said, you can just kind of be stuck at home unless you want to wade your way out.
The worst flooding for me when I ever lived was when I lived in Chinatown. And my building, it was almost like it was built on a little baseball pitcher's mound, because whenever it flooded even a little bit, and it was also right on the river, the river would back up and then the flood would come in, and it was like it turned into an island, and it was knee deep out the soy to get out to the main street. So unless you wanted to get real wet, you were basically just like, well, there goes my morning. I'm going to get to work 4 hours late. So it can really throw a monkey in the wrench, so to speak, in terms of your plans for the day.
Man, some of the news stories are pretty bad. I don't know if you saw the news story about Gao Chang. So Gao Chang, or most of our listeners probably know Gao Chang, but Gao Chang is a very big island southeast, so kind of near Cambodia. And apparently it got hit really bad.
Yeah, the pictures coming out of there are crazy. Just huge floods and beaches and buildings and stuff being washed away. And I saw someone say that like this is totally expected given the pace of development, and this just eliminates the natural drainage and the vegetation and the foliage, and the water's got nowhere to go. So,
what worries me about the flooding here is that I'm not sure it's actually totally fixable, because as almost everyone knows, Bangkok is almost at sea level. So essentially we're at the level of the ocean, and thanks to climate change and the rising ocean waters, I think Bangkok is expected to be underwater relatively soon. So I found a recent article. This is on insider.com, and it's called 11 Sinking Cities That Could Soon Be Underwater. And I'll just read through them really quickly. So number 1 is Jakarta. Number 2 is Lagos, Nigeria. Number 3 is Houston. Number 4 is Dhaka. Number 5 is Venice, obviously. Number 6 is Virginia Beach, Virginia. But number 7 is Bangkok. And it says Bangkok is sinking at a rate of more than 1 centimeter a year and could be below sea level by 2030. So that's not that far away.
That's 10
years
away. 10 years from now. I'll still be alive.
Yeah, I hope so. I
was going to say, if it's 80 years from now, I'd be like, yeah, that's going to suck. But
I'm not going to be here. Whatever. So you would think that the city has got to have some type of plan, right? I mean, this is, it's not like some unpredictable thing. The whole point is it's totally predictable. Like Bangkok is on a river. It's on the ocean practically. Sea levels are rising. Bangkok is at sea level. So, I mean, what's the damn solution, Greg?
The damn solution. Well, when you look at the cities like Jakarta, right? They've made noise recently. They might just relocate the entire city to Borneo. That's right. One plan.
That is such a fascinating thing. I mean, they're being kind of ballsy. I don't think their plan is really to move the whole city, but they want to move the capital and just get right. They want to get important shit out of Jakarta. But God, do you ever think the Thai government would do anything so bold as to like? I don't think they would move the Thai government out of Bangkok. That would be just too ballsy.
Yeah, and I don't think it's Bangkok in particular, although we can use Bangkok as an example. I just think it's humans. It takes like a real disaster crisis for them to do something. Like it's the thing about climate change and flooding is that it's so slow and it's just easy to ignore. And I think our natural predisposition is just to ignore stuff, But if you ever, I think we've talked about this on the show before. That great novel called The Wind-Up Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi.
Yes, we have talked about it before.
Yeah, it's a great show that takes place in like 100 years in the future in Bangkok. But in the story, they've built massive seawalls around the city to keep out the ocean. It's an interesting thing, but it might have to be done eventually. But
the Dutch figured it out like 500 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know why they just don't call a bunch of Dutch people and, hey, help us figure this out. Here's $1 billion baht.
How the hell did they figure it out?
Well, they're Dutch.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe it's just because they're very tall. It's like they can stand in very deep water.
That's right. You think that would be the opposite? Well, we've got an extra 6 inches to work with, so we don't have to be in a hurry.
So I mean, I don't want to be like too cynical about it, but it just seems like Bangkok is in exactly the wrong place,
right,
for rising waters. And okay, I gotta say, it's true. We haven't had the massive floods we had at the end of 2011, but there's still severe flooding, like not just in Bangkok, but all over the country. So it's like, I don't know if they have a solution. I don't know if they have a plan.
Well, I guess not. But I don't know, weren't they building like a huge drainage tunnel underneath Bangkok a few months back or a few years back? And I guess it opened and then it didn't work out as well as they thought it would or something like that. Like, I haven't heard anything about that lately.
This is one of those, God, I don't know what the right word to call it is, but it's almost one of these like economics problems where, you know, things seem to be bad, but it really depends on what you compare it to. So, for example, maybe changes that they made after 2011 have actually worked and saved us from even worse floods. You know,
right.
You know what I'm saying? It's
in an
like,
alternate universe, Bangkok is underwater already.
yeah, you know, it's like, so who knows? Maybe the experts are looking out at Bangkok today and they're going, we win. You know, like, because whatever. You know what I'm saying?
That's scary. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like, who knows? Who knows? I don't even know what they've done. So maybe what they've done has actually kept us above water this far.
Well, the scary part is that even knowing what the weather is like here and even knowing what the rainy season brings, it seems like at certain points are still unprepared for it. Like, did you see that video that was going around on Facebook the other day from Central Westgate where the roof caved in from the rainstorms the other night?
Dude, that was crazy. We got to include a link for that for our listeners. But basically, Central Westgate is a relatively new, very high-end mall. So this is not some old mall built in the 1960s, like with shoddy construction. Apparently, it's a brand new mall built with potentially shoddy construction, because you know, listeners, essentially, this is an entire section of the roof just collapsed under the weight of rainwater, luckily, according to the story, nobody was hurt, but it's basically a big, giant, gaping hole in the roof of an upscale mall. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, and that's a really nice mall. That's the one with the second IKEA in it, and it's also got a gigantic kids' playground. It's like the size of a football field, filled with toys and bouncy castles.
Yeah, no, this is a upscale mall and relatively newly constructed. And for some reason, it couldn't handle a torrential downpour, which is entirely predictable. Right.
So it just, you know, it's like when we talked about earthquakes on the show a long time ago, and someone told me, like, yeah, if there's ever an earthquake in Bangkok, like, every building is going to pancake because they're just not built to spec. I'm not saying that the Central Westgate wasn't built to spec, but it seems that they would at least be able to say, like, hey, you know, we get a lot of rain, so we better make sure our systems are able to handle it.
Yeah, that's a pretty. I mean, again, nobody was injured. I don't want to exaggerate the problem, but that seems to be a pretty big screw up if, like, a big section of your roof is collapsing due to rain, which it is the rainy season. So it's like the exact kind of thing you would be built to. Like, for example, it wasn't some kind of typhoon or tsunami that's unexpected in Bangkok.
Yeah. Well, you know, to be fair, though, like in Canada, every once in a while you'll hear like a stadium collapse under the weight of the snow or something like that. It's just an unusual amount of snow or some unusual conditions that they weren't expecting or something like that. So it does happen, but
I don't know, man.
It's a pretty new mall.
I don't know. I mean, that rainstorm was a fairly typical bad rainstorm. It wasn't some unusual, like, oh my God, it rained 3 days in a row. It wasn't that kind of rainstorm.
I don't know. I think it was pretty heavy. When I dropped you off, because we met the other night and I dropped Ed off because I was driving, and I drove home and it was hammering pretty hard.
But it does that. No, I mean, no, you're right. Yeah. It was, but I don't know if it was out of character or unusual. You know, it just seems that complaints about flooding, they're not the same every year. So I wouldn't say that I hear a lot of complaints about flooding every year, but it's another one of these recurring problems that the city can't seem to get a handle of. And you just see random intersections that are basically underwater, you know, and it basically happens every year. And if not every year, it's happening every couple of years.
Right. I got to say, I think one of the biggest problems is plastic bags. You know, you get 2 or 3 7-Eleven plastic bags, and they can completely close off an entire drain.
Yeah, it's a good point. I wonder if that's part of it. I mean, at least the plastic bag thing does seem to be getting a little bit better, where 7-Eleven is now giving you a choice. Is that correct? Or a lot of supermarkets seem to give you a choice now.
Yeah, ostensibly. Like I went to the grocery store the other day and they didn't give me a plastic bag, so I was like, "Yay, no plastic bag!" And then they pulled out this huge paper bag for like a tiny little thing I bought. So it was either like carry this massive paper bag or a little plastic bag. So I was like, well, just give me the plastic bag. I'll reuse it for garbage at home.
Well,
so it's at least they're trying.
Yeah, at least they're doing something. I mean, I just got to say this about flooding, and to all of our listeners, whether you are an expat yourself, whether you're a new tourist, whether you're a re-tourist, if you're going to come to Thailand during the rainy season, you really should watch the news. Like the bottom line is, flooding is just a real problem. Like, and it's no joke, and it's not just in faraway rural areas. It's in tourist areas like Gao Chang. Gao Chang is primarily a tourist destination.
You want to know the funniest thing I've ever seen in a flood?
I'm all ears.
I was waiting to cross the street, and there's a couple of university girls, and one of them tried to jump over a puddle, and her phone was in her breast pocket, and it fell out and landed right in the puddle she jumped over.
She must have been crushed. I mean, to have your phone fall in a puddle right in front of you, that must be crushing for like a Thai girl.
Yeah, no kidding. And she was like, and all of her friends got down and tried to fish it out of the water. So just put that in some rice, and all is well.
That's right.
But yeah, man, it's a problem. Bangkok is sinking. We've talked before about how they've been sucking out the groundwater, which increases the rate of sinkage.
That's right.
So it doesn't seem like there's any long-term, solid, large-scale solutions. They only have sort of smaller ones, like putting your finger in the hole in the dike, which doesn't really fix the problem.
That's right. Maybe the moral of this episode of the Bangkok podcast should be that if you're thinking about coming to Bangkok, you need to come here right away, because we might be underwater. We might be underwater in 5 years.
Yeah, this will be renamed the Bangkok Aquacast.
That's right. And as long as we stay on higher floors of our buildings, we'll be okay.
That's right. Yeah, and we joke about it, but it's in my son is, if we're still here when he's an adult, he's probably going to have to worry about it a lot more than we are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people can always move and live somewhere else, but it would be pretty depressing if Bangkok is kind of ruined by this, because it is predictable. It's not some totally random thing coming out of nowhere. It's a predictable thing.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder what the breaking point would be for you or me. Like, what would cause us to say, that's it, I'm moving to Chiang Mai, moving to Canada, whatever?
I don't know. I mean, the floods in 2011 didn't affect where I lived, but they did affect my university, and it was really a pain to get to work. And if that kind of thing, if I felt like that was going to happen every year, I would leave. It really was about 3 months of serious inconvenience. And luckily, It's only like floods like that have only happened once since I've been here. But yeah, no, I mean, if it was, and I know there are places, I think certain parts of Bangladesh, they severely flood every year.
Right.
And so if that would be too much, that would really be too much.
I think we can all deal with a minor inconvenience during the rainy season, but as soon as it turns into a major inconvenience during the rainy season and the dry season, or part of the hot season or whatever, then it starts to think like, well, yeah. So I don't know. I hope they are thinking big in terms of solutions, but I also think they need to think small, like the plastic bag things,
right?
Like reducing the removal of groundwater, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's just, I'm just frightened. Like, I wish we had like a hidden camera somewhere that could just peek into Bangkok city meetings to see what's going on. I mean, obviously we wouldn't understand what they were saying, but if we could, like, I hope it's not just like 3 guys like chit-chatting about it. I hope it's like a serious team of hardcore, like, engineers, you know what I mean? Like, I have no idea how many people they have on this problem. Like, I really hope
like
it's not like
sleeves rolled up, pointing at diagrams on a whiteboard kind of thing with a pen in the hand.
I mean, they better have a war room. That's all I got to say. They better have like a war room full of like PhDs,
or else it's just 9 people sitting on a table, like
right, asleep at the wheel. Great, just what we need. The future of our city, right?
Right. All right, well, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us surprises the other with a particular aspect of life in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept it as something that we cannot change, so we might as well just leave it be. And this week, it is my turn.
All right.
So, Ed, this is a fairly esoteric one, and it's something that I have... Well, I'll say it right off the bat. I'm a live with because I have no other choice. But
okay.
What do you think of Bangkok's selection of underarm antiperspirant?
Whoa.
For men.
Well, that I got to say that was pretty unexpected, dude.
Yeah.
The selection of antiperspirant for men. Well, to be honest, I haven't noticed a big problem with it. Although every time I go home and I go to an American grocery store or an American shop or store, I am shocked at how many more choices there are back home. I mean, obviously there's nice supermarkets here, but there's still like less selection, especially for things that seem to be geared towards bigger guys. You know.
Well, I'm not looking right.
When it comes to like, dude, when it comes to deodorant, like there's some name brand deodorants. It's never been that big a problem to find like a name brand deodorant. Like what are you talking about, man?
Well, here's my thing. I used to use this Gillette gel, where you turn the thing on the bottom and it squeezes through the thing.
Yeah.
You can't get that anymore. Like as of like 5 years ago.
Well, I just switched to something else. I know what you're talking about. I used to use that too, and I switched to something else.
Well, I switched to the Nivea, the little Nivea, I think.
Yeah,
bottles.
like the blue bottles with the yeah. You don't like that?
Yeah, they look like dicks. And it works. It works, and that's what I use. But there's like, what else is there? I've seen a couple of other brands, but they're usually like got some whitening cream in them or some crap like that. So, I mean, from my experience, I would say 95% of the men's deodorant in Bangkok is like those little blue or clear dick-looking Nivea bottles, and that's it.
Interesting. Yeah, I gotta say, I've never had a problem. Maybe you sweat more than I do. But
no, I don't have a problem with the product. It works fine. It's just there's no selection.
So even though it works fine, you're still pissed.
I want choice, man. I want my deodorant of choice. I want my Gillette squeezable gel back. The only place you used to be able to buy that was at Watson's drugstore, and then they stopped selling it about 5 years ago.
All right, dude. Well, we're gonna have to put this on the list of like first world problems. You can't get exactly the deodorant you want, is what you're saying.
That's right. That's my love, loathe, or live with.
Well,
I have to live with it.
I got to admit, sometimes I do find myself in that situation where it's like I just like a particular product, and it's like I just get attached to it, and then I can't find it here in Bangkok, and it can drive me crazy. But I gotta say,
it's like going to a restaurant and ordering a Coke, and they're like, "Oh, all we have is Est."
Yeah, you're like, yeah, no, I'm with you, man. But I gotta say, I've never had the deodorant problem, but I would feel weird saying I love the deodorant choice in Thailand, so I'm gonna have to go live with. I'm gonna have to jump in your boat, and I can live with it. I've got no problems.
Okay, actually, I should change my answer. I am a loathe, obviously, because I dislike that I'm forced to buy one single brand, even though it works fine. I want choice, damn it. I want choice.
So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Yap for lending us his support at the show shoutout level. And Greg, what did you find out about Yap?
Well, let me tell you, Ed, I think we're doing pretty well with the podcast here. We have a good product. But whenever we decide that we want to kick things up a notch and take things to the next level, I think we ought to hire Yap as our business advisor, the official Bangkok podcast business advisor. Because he seems like a pretty hard-driving, no-bull kind of guy, the kind of guy you want to have in your corner. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But why do you think that?
Well, this is the email, because, when someone supports a show, I write out an email and I say, hey, man, thanks for the support. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. So this is what Yap wrote. He said, I've been living in Thailand for 3 years now. I still don't like the beach, and I still don't like Thai food. Not really sure I understand where that's coming from, but okay, everyone's got their quirks. I used to play poker all night, sleep in school, repeat. Dropped out of college after a discussion with a marketing professor, started my own company, and ran out of money. No one wanted to invest in my startup in Belgium, so with my last $1,000, I booked flights to Singapore, Bangkok, Jakarta, and KL to raise money from investors, started my own company in Singapore, and have a second office in Bangkok now where I live. How badass is that?
Dude, that is really badass, man. I mean, that's huge. That's like a dream come true.
Yeah, this is the kind of guy, like I said, we want a guy like Yap in our corner. We want him like,
heck yeah,
go get that opportunities. Go get that while me and Ed be lazy on the sofa back here with the microphones in our face.
Heck yeah. We need a business manager.
He says, other than that, I switched to watching Formula One instead of football because of bloody time zones, and I prefer to pay 100 baht a bottle for Stella instead of having to drink Chang for free. I think that's awesome.
That is great.
I think that's a great way to describe a lot of things. I would rather pay for that than get that for free.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So, Yap sounds like a badass. He's here, cutting a rug in the business world. So cool. His company is called OctoTrip, and they help companies manage their business travel. And they've got a really nice website. So check it out if you're into that kind of thing. So thanks, Yap. We appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
He sounds like you're on your way to some major success. And we wish you the best of luck. And thanks for supporting the show. We hope to see you at our next meetup, whenever that may be.
Yeah, welcome aboard.
Maybe we can be making like really lots of money one day, like the Bangkok podcast, and we'll need to have like business trips, like first class flights and stuff like that. We can use OctoTrip to sort it all out.
That would be cool. We can always dream.
Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up, I'd like to give a special thanks to all of our lovely patrons. As you know, we don't run ads or have sponsors, so we really, really do appreciate the support we get from our patrons. If you want to learn more, just head to bangkokpodcast.com/support. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's easy. Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We are very polite, and if you write, we will answer.
Yeah, and you can also find each episode on YouTube, and you can also follow us online, where we post each episode and carry on conversations with our listeners. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter if you'd like, where I am BKK Greg. So thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week.
We will see you next week.
So it doesn't seem like there's any long-term, solid, large-scale solutions, like little stopgap things like putting your hole in the dike. Doesn't make any sense.